For what deed must his head be hung for all to see? For what deed must the waters they govern roam free?
For what deed, precisely? Long ago, the Jing River Valley's abundance nourished China's ancient Zhou dynasty. This river and its tributaries were governed by Loong King of Jing River. Loong are legendary creatures in Chinese myth, sharing some similarities to Western dragons, and are symbols of auspicious power, especially over water and weather. Loong King administered the Jing River for millennia, cultivated the land, and obeyed imperial decrees sent from the Jade Emperor of the Celestial Court in heaven. One day, a village fisherman bragged about his plentiful hauls, his boat laden with mounds of fish and shrimp. The fisherman's success lay in his daily visits with Yuan Shaocheng, a wandering and often drunk fortune-teller, possessed of deep divination. He could read fate in the weaves of destiny. This attracted Loong King's attention, who feared overfishing would deplete the Jing River and ruin the natural balance of his domain. Disguised as a human, he sought Yuan Shaocheng to end the man's brazen fortune-telling. Loong King commanded Yuan to predict the amount and time of rainfall the coming day, and offered a wager. If the prediction turned true, the Loong would leave Yuan to be, but if it turned false, then Loong would force the wanderer from his lands. Yuan divined the future, which filled Loong King with delight. As the Jing River Guardian, he had direct control over the region's weather, and was sure he'd win the bet. But to his dismay, an imperial decree arrived ordering the exact amount of rain at the exact time that Yuan Shaocheng predicted. Not to be bested, the Jing River Loong manipulated the weather to slightly alter the rainfall, and beat Yuan. Next day, he gloated in his victory, but Yuan Shaocheng foresaw a grim fate. For his actions, the Loong King would meet death. A celestial officer arrived with a writ for the king's execution. He had defied the Jade Emperor's decree by changing the weather, a crime worthy of death. Loong King of Jing River approached the human emperor of China, Tang Taisong, and begged him to delay the executioner. Tang Emperor stalled enough to put the executioner to sleep, but the officer dreamt of beheading Loong King, and so it was that the Jing River entity was beheaded in reality. The defiance and death of Loong King for such a trifling matter is tragic, but significant. It inadvertently instigated Tang Emperor's desire to bring Buddhist sutras to China and Tan Sanzang's journey to the west. The Loong was nothing more than a pawn caught in the schemes of both Buddhist and Taoist heavenly pantheons. The contempt for heaven is felt in Yellow Long's voice.
Our sire gave his life to pave the way for the journey. And not a day passes that we do not yearn to avenge him.
But Loong King of Jing River left behind a legacy in his children, princes now gravely threatened with an uncertain future ahead of them. 9 is an auspicious number in Chinese mythology, charged with symbolism, and 9 is the number of fatherless children that survived Loong King of Jing River's execution. The 4 most influential are princes of China's great rivers. Yellow Long, the eldest, administered Huai River and is unparalleled in spear skill. Then there is Black Long of Ji River, whose thunderous mace forces waters to jump their banks. Next is Cyan Long, a calm and level-headed being that represents the Yellow River. Finally, Red Long, youngest of the 4, commands the mighty Yangtze River. The Loong Princes endured Tang Monk's journey west with anxiety, a feeling that was only heightened following its success. While gods and immortals doled out accolades, the Loong Princes were overlooked and received nothing, their judgment still being weighed against their father's actions. The lore tells us that they sought out Yuan Shaocheng for guidance. The fortune-teller, perhaps with some guilt for his role in the king's death, offered a murky portent. The Loong lies hid, not a time for action. But the Loong Princes could wait no more. They submitted resignations of their river posts and wished to seclude themselves, but were denied by the Celestial Court. On bated breath they lingered, until one day the future shifted. Yuan told them, "The Loong lies hid, it stirs in the deep." Now was their moment. Rather than suffer their father's fate, The Loong Princes fled from the Celestials, abandoned their duties, and dispersed to hidden reaches. The poem Yuan Shaocheng recites when approaching their abodes conveys this tale. 4 lines and 4 brothers.
For what deed must his head be hung for all to see?
Refers to King Long's crime and decapitation.
For what deed must the waters they governed roam free?
Tells us that the princes left their rivers, and throughout Black Myth, we're told the 4 rivers are out of control, suggesting the princes' rebellion against heaven.
For what deed must all matters not known how to be? For what deed must mercy's hand so woe upon thee?
These lines might propose that the fate of the Loong Princes is still unclear, unknown, but that destiny and mercy work to undo the brothers. Cunning Red Loong traded treasures for protection with the greedy Black Bear Guai, king of Black Wind Mountain and disciple of Bodhisattva Guanyin, the embodiment of mercy. He lavished gifts on the bear, perhaps while Long sculpts adorn the restored Guanyin temple, who then granted Red Loong a secret grove to hide. Their relationship could be referenced in Chapter 1's tapestry, where Long winds around a structure for protection. Black Long had for ages fiercely guarded the Pearl of Wisdom in Ji River, that none dared venture into his lair for risk of death. But the lore tells us that his father's sentence struck a nerve with the prince. No, I would not dare to call forth the smallest storm save at the bidding of those higher. Idle talk, all of it. My own sire was condemned to the bite of steel for one trifling error. A master thief, garbed in a midnight robe and white necklace, Yellowwind sage in human disguise, happened upon the Loong Prince, and the pair set off together to the west, settling near the fallen kingdom of Flowing Sands. Cyan Long fled to the New West, domain of Yellowbrow and his false religion of ultimate bliss. The Loong Prince refused to submit to Yellowbrow's dogma, but he didn't want to offend the master of these lands for risk of imprisonment or exile. He and the Yaoguai king agreed to a bet. If Cyan Long caught a fish in Bitter Lake, he could remain in the New West, but on the stipulation that once cast, neither he nor the fishing rod could move. He sat on the great turtle general's back for years, accumulating snow in unmoving vigil. The eldest brother, Yellow Long, decided the safest place to sidestep a disastrous fate would be with one who could read the future, so secretly tailed Yuan Shaocheng. The lore tells us that after his brothers each fled to distant realms, he transformed into a long pattern on Yuan Shaocheng's robe. For the next 100 years, he followed the old man across the vast lands, watching him decipher omens and foretell futures. And so, the 4 Loong Princes avoided death, defied the heavens, and seemingly fate itself. But the threads of their futures would soon entangle with those of Sun Wukong's destined reincarnation, a path that leads ultimately to woe.
It houses a treasure that none other can see, a scale shed by the old Long King of Jing River.
To rouse the Loong Princes from hiding, the Destined One must first acquire the Long Scales, locked in an ancient chamber deep within Yellowwind Ridge. Interestingly, a mural accompanies the scales that depicts Sun Wukong during his discipleship under Patriarch Subhuti. Perhaps his old desire for immortality parallels the Long's desire to preserve their lives. This is also the first indication that the prince's fates are indeed connected to the Destined One. With the magic of the scales, the Destined One can dispel waterfalls that obscure the Long domains, or else stir them to action. First is the youngest, Red Loong in Black Wind Mountain, who has suffered in self-imposed exile. Over the centuries, his powers diminished, and he lost the ability to fly. He traded wealth for ancient wisdom, and Black Bear sold Red Loong the Boshan sensor artifact to emit smoke, as it's said that a Long cannot traverse without clouds. With the sensor on his back, Red Loong could again take to the skies, but only in limited bouts and at great cost. The sensor ate away at the Yaoguai's will. He attached more of these and exhausted more will, but never again could he reclaim what was lost. Red Long's story highlights how time and neglect erode potential. Such is the nature of all knowledge. If not applied, it withers away to nothing in the end. After Red Long's defeat, the Destined One acquires his Thunder Tail and the Boshan sensor. In Chapter 2, Black Long hides within the blowing sand of Yellowwind Ridge. In exchange for his protection, the Yaoguai King Yellowwind Sage demanded all of Black Long's wealth. Without hoard but with life intact, the prince bides his time and awaits destiny. His tale is one of responsibility shirked. Before he left Ji River, Black Long conversed one final time with Yuan. I asked the fortune teller, and he said if I hide well and kill some westbound monkey, I may yet atone for my misdeeds and restore my honor. This again binds the Loong Princes to the Destined One. They are pushed by fate to vanquish one another. In combat, Black Long holds nothing back. He wields lightning-charged maces that hammer the earth and send destructive shockwaves along the ground. Once defeated, the Destined One gains Black Long's Thunder Bone and Tridacna Pendant. The bone and the tail can be used to craft the Long Wreath Staff, the description of which refers to Long King's execution. The long slain dead with sword's swift lunge, into the void its head did plunge. Long holding pearls adorn the weapon, indicative of prosperity and wisdom. The third Loong Prince is found on Bitter Lake within the New West, where he hasn't stirred for centuries. Covered in snow and cold as a stone statue, Cyan Long fishes from Turtle General's back, and is only moved to action in the presence of the Long Scale's fading power. This Loong Prince of Yellow River is a skilled swordmaster and wields the legendary Long's Light Blade, from which emits powerful lightning. Cyan Long's retirement into quiet contemplation and his bet with Yellowbrow highlight the importance of perseverance, of patience, and inner peace. Yellowbrow thought he had won his bet against the Long, but the terms were precisely what Cyan Prince desired. But even so, he couldn't hide from fate. The Destined One brings about this formidable prince's destruction, and once defeated, the Long drops Breath of Fire and Mountain-Shaking Claw, a relic that hints at the great power possessed by Cyan Long. All that remains is the eldest prince, Yellow Long, who has journeyed alongside Yuan Shaocheng, hidden upon his tunic.
Yuan the Sign Teller could never have known that. I've hidden upon his garb as a pattern.
The assertion that the Destined One's fate is indeed tied to the Loong Princes is indisputable upon reaching the relief of the fallen Long, a mountain outcropping deep within the webbed hollow. Even with the Long Scale, the Yellow Prince only appears after his brothers have been vanquished. Before Yellow Long crosses blades with the monkey, he states,
I'll kill you to unbind our destinies.
Their destiny, though tragic, is traced with a glimmer of hope. The Longs will meet their end not unnecessarily, but rather as a step along the righteous cause. Perhaps this righteous cause is the Destined One's elevation to Great Sage, after embodying Sun Wukong's legacy. As Monkey King reincarnated, the Destined One could prove capable of avenging the Four Longs, of bringing justice to a celestial court that is cold, self-interested, and overbearing with its punishments. But Yellow Long doesn't submit to fate easily. He is the strongest and most skilled of the Loong Princes, and proves a formidable adversary. His story highlights the struggle between fate and determinism. The lore tells us that in his travels with Yuan, Yellow Long witnesses the fortune teller divine hundreds of fates. But what good did his words change? Most, in their hubris, fell into the same snares. Yuan frequently turned to drink to numb the burden and guilt of his powers. In a stupor, he would muse aloud about destiny and purpose, whether beings were tied to an unalterable path, or whether they could blaze their own trail. The Long often wondered if these words were meant for him. As time went on, they gnawed at his heart, leaving him torn and unable to decide whether to leave. Yellow Long's internal struggle comes to a climax following his defeat. He had possessed Yuan's body, and after declaring his disobedience to fate and warning about the Destined One's own role, assumes his true form. On the verge of fleeing, Yuan pleads with Yellow Long to accept destiny, to reunite with his fallen brothers, or else history will continue to repeat. Fate will always come to claim him. The Loong Prince finally submits. Upon his defeat, the Golden Carp, the sea-supporting tendon, and the golden lining transformation are all acquired. Capable of supporting the sky and the sea, this long tendon is the last relic of the Four Loong brothers. It may be combined with the rest of the collection, which unlocks the legendary Golden Loong staff. This weapon is the embodiment of all Four Loong Princes, as its acquisition requires all of their defeats. They are then united within the staff to assist the Destined One on its journey. It may be that this is the real essence of their destiny, sacrificed in a way, but with their combined might to aid Wukong's reincarnation in ultimately claiming vengeance for their father and peace for their own spirits. A poetic and dreadful end for four brothers fated to bear the sins of their father. But is this truly the Loong Prince's tale, or does something yet lie beneath the surface? Deceit, the rewriting of history, and spreading of false dogma are themes that course throughout Black Myth Wukong, as Celestials and Immortals alike try to improve their image or else sway followers. So whose words can we really trust, and what reality lies buried under falsehood? There's an interesting theory that asserts the Four Loong Princes aren't the true sons of Long King of Jing River, but rather the earthly manifestations of the Golden Loong staff itself that were released from the weapon and split into four distinct entities. Much of the great research in theory crafting is courtesy of the Enchanted Star at FMS YouTube channel. I'll provide a link to the video in the description. The foundation of such speculation lies within the original Journey to the West novel, when Sun Wukong first crossed paths with Yellowwind Sage, who had taken Tong Monk captive following the death of his tiger vanguard. Yellowwind Sage could whip up Samadhi wind, unconquerable except by Bodhisattva Lingji, a Buddhist deity who subdued the Yaoguai in the past. Lingji received two gifts from the Buddha to assist his defeat of Yellowwind Sage: the Wind Tamer vessel and a mystical staff referred to in this passage. On Sumeru Mountain, there is a flying dragon staff, the weapon the Buddha once gave to Lingji. The Golden Loong staff, when transliterated from its original Chinese, is called the Flying Dragon Staff, suggesting these two are one and the same. Sun Wukong called on Lingji, who intervened after several bouts between the monkey and Yellowwind Sage. The Bodhisattva dropped it from the sky, and as it descended towards the Yaoguai, it released an 8-clawed golden dragon that grabbed him with two of its claws and smashed him several times. At this, the monster reverted to his true form, a brown marten. This tale is tied to Black Myth in the description of Golden Loong staff, which reads nearly identically to the excerpt from the novel. The events are further illustrated in Chapter 2's tapestry, which depicts a large golden long swirling from Lingji's staff to the aid of Sun Wukong. So, what became of the Golden Long and Lingji's staff following Journey to the West? The linchpin of this theory rests in the interpretation of the original Chinese dialogue when the old monkey sage narrates Lingji's tapestry, which loosely translates to, "So what if it's the 8-clawed gold dragon? When mortal thoughts or compassions took root, even bodhisattvas have to suffer." The theory believes this discusses both the spirit of the Golden Long within the staff and Lingji's own soul. After centuries walking the mortal realm with its owner, the specter of the Golden Long developed a persona and yearned for freedom. It was trapped within the staff and suffered under Buddha. We see a Buddha hand clutching the long in the design of the staff, suggesting Western Heaven's dominance over Golden Long since the weapon's creation. Bodhisattva Lingji too developed compassion, directed at the long spirit within his staff, and grew to pity it. Perhaps he shattered his staff, each piece becoming its own entity, assuming the mantle of a Loong Prince and flying to freedom in the remote wilderness. Rather than the celestial court in Eastern Heaven, they fear Buddha's reprisal and the deities of Western Heaven for uncovering their escape. That the Long are parts of a greater whole rather than individuals, and that the princes are fragments of the Long staff is supported in two ways. First, when they're defeated, these Yaoguai don't disintegrate into nothingness, but rather materialize into a chest that contains a fragment of the Golden Long staff, the physical source of their spiritual power. If you look closely, these boxes are adorned with Buddhist art rather than Taoist, hinting at the connection to Lingji and the Buddhists feared wrath. All 4 of these fragments of the dragon and the staff are needed to restore the mythical weapon. The second support comes in dialogue following Yellow Long's defeat when Yuan beseeches the prince.
All 3 of your brothers have been claimed. If not now, when will you reunite? Destiny repeats itself, always. Why not cast the die once more?
The previous 3 fragments of the staff have already been collected by the Destined One. If only the Yellow Long spirit would reunite, they could again become the Golden Long. The Long spirits are further tied to Lingqi and Buddha by the location in which the Long scales are found that initiates their quest. These scales are stored in the cave within Yellowwind Ridge, a ridge where Lingqi's presence is great. Additionally, its entrance wall is covered in Buddhist reliefs, and the old kingdom of Sahali that once stood here was devout in their Buddhist following, linking the Golden Long to Western Heaven. So, it could stand to reason that the Loong Princes are tortured and misunderstood fragments of a greater Golden Long that resided within the legendary staff of Bodhisattva Lingqi. Of course, this is just a theory, and itself filled with several flaws. Part of the difficulty in interpreting comes from the fact that many Westerners, including myself, play in a language other than Black Myth's original Chinese, and things can be lost in translation. But I think the Loong Princes are the actual sons of Long King of Jing River, rather than fragments of Lingqi's staff. Most obvious is that the lore directly tells us in the portraits that the Loong Princes are related, and their sire was Long King, further supported by this dialogue from Erlang Shen.
So the 4 sons of that Long King succumbed to destiny.
And in conversation with Yuan Xiaocheng.
When the Long King defied the court, the Jade Emperor was set to punish his entire house. The 4 sons of the Long King, deities of the 4 waters, fled.
To purposefully contradict this makes little sense. Then, the linchpin bit of audio that this theory rests upon in Chapter 2's Tapestry reads this in English.
His golden long staff meant nothing once mortal compassions took root. Bodhisattvas too could fall in this way.
This and even the original Chinese don't point to the Golden Long within the staff being its own entity. Rather, the narrator is highlighting that no matter how strong his weapons or how powerful the Golden Long spirit, once Lingqi's heart was stained by mortal compassions, he couldn't save himself. Also, Yuan's comment about reuniting seems more as a plea for Yellow Long to accept fate as his brothers had, a reunion of the sons in spirit rather than a physical reunion as shattered parts of the golden staff. Finally, the prevalence of Buddhist art and symbolism in connection to the Loong Princes is more indicative that they are protecting the sons of Long King from the celestial court rather than hunting and imprisoning their spirits. We know both pantheons of deities struggle against each other for religious primacy, and the Buddhists may see powerful pawns in the Loong Princes to use against their Taoist rivals. Regardless of the truth, none can deny that the plight of the 4 Loong Princes is tragic. We can only hope that through the Destined One, they don't suffer in vain.
Their glory fades through time in tombs of somber gray.
Thanks so much for watching and listening to this video on the fall of the Loong Dynasty in Black Myth Wukong. Let me know your thoughts about the secret theory, whether it bears any weight, as well as suggestions for future videos in the comments below. And if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the podcast where content is uploaded frequently. I want to take a moment to thank my amazing supporters over on Patreon, who make all of this possible, and I couldn't do it without their fantastic support. If you'd like to become a lore luminary for access to me, a great community, written scripts, and early video drops, head to patreon.com/thelorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.